Yes, a very good afternoon to all the course participants. So, in this course, the first lecture is on Introduction to Remote Sensing and GIS. So, basically, we will be talking about the geodata and what are the various types of geodata and what is geospatial analysis based upon raster and the vector data sets. So, we will be covering more on to that also. What do you mean by a raster data or what do you mean by a vector data? So, the content goes like the geospatial technology, basically what is it, who are the users and what are various applications, and definitions of remote sensing and GIS I will be covering, different data sources, and about the spatial data analysis. So, the objective of the session will go like this, to make you aware about the data types and processing involved in geo processing and visualization. Basically, the geo visualization we can talk how to visualize those satellite images. So, when we talk about the geospatial technology, it enables us to acquire the location specific data about the earth and use them for analysis, modeling, simulations and visualization. So, you can just see that the data need to be location specific, means the data should have some latitudes and longitudinal information along with it. Then we call it as a geospatial data. So, that kind of data set. So, how we can use it for analysis, what kind of modeling we can perform on top of that data, some simulations and some visualizations. So, there are basic in when we talk about this geospatial technology, we have three basic terms are coming into picture. What are those three basic terms? The first one we call it as a remote sensing. Basically, when we talk about remote sensing, it goes into the sensors that are operating in the different parts of electromagnetic region at various spatial, temporal and spectral resolution. I will be covering more onto this spatial, temporal and spectral resolution. So, you can just see in the coming slides it will be covered. So, basically the remote sensing deals with those sensors, means capturing the data from a remote locations. So, it can be a satellite image or it can be some drone image or it can be an airborne images also. Okay, anything they comes under the category of remote sensing. Secondly, the second component in geospatial technologies is something called GIS or Geographical Information System. So, it basically help us to create the spatial data in the form of geometries. Okay, updating those data sets, visualizing those data sets and analyzing those data sets. So, these are the three major components of a geographical information system. The third component is the satellite navigation. So, it basically gives us the information of position and timing. It can be GPS, it can be a Navig based system, which is an indigenous Indian system, regional navigation system. Okay, Navig, you can say navigation through Indian constellation. So, so these three components are there: remote sensing, GIS, and satellite navigation. So, you must be aware whenever you are going for any kind of this Python programming or geo processing, these three should you should keep in your mind as well. There is something called remote sensing, there is a separate component called GIS, and a separate component called a navigation also. Okay, satellite navigation. So, and now coming to that, who are the people who are using these kinds of technologies, these geospatial technologies? What for purpose they are using it? Okay, so if you can say that an urban planner, he might use, you want to access the extent of urban fringe growth in his or her city and quantify the population growth that some suburbs are witnessing. He also may be interested to understand why these particular suburbs are growing and why not others are growing. So that kind of if and why, those queries he can put up there through GIS. So these kinds of uh, an urban planners can get the answers to these questions from geospatial technology. Similarly, a biologist, he might be interested in the impact of slash and burn practices on the population of amphibian species in the forest of a mountain range to obtain a better understanding of long term threat to those populations. So, that kind of queries he can get the answers in through geospatial technology. If we talk about a natural hazard analyst, he might be he might like to identify the high risk areas of any annual monsoon related flooding by investigating the rainfall pattern and the terrestrial and the terrain characteristics, how the terrain is varying, uh, how the terrain is varying, varying basically how it is changing and what is the rainfall pattern in those terrains. So he want to analyze all these criteria and want to generate a risk map, basically, kind of thing. It can be a forest fire manager. He want to highlight the point which are vulnerable for the forest. He might be interested to know what are the possible sites where a flood can occur, which are the possible sites for a landslide. So there are various applications for a natural hazard analyst as well. Now, geological engineer, he might be very much interested to find out the location where he can construct the building in an earthquake prone areas by looking at the rock formation characteristics. So this rock formation characteristics, this information he need to generate it to a geospatial domain in a GIS format. So once that data is in the GIS format, then he can quickly generate the possible locations where these buildings can be generated. They can be constructed, basically. Similarly, a mining engineer, he could be interested in determining which prospective copper mines should be selected for future exploration, taking into account parameters such as extent, depth, quality of the ore body, and various other parameters, basically. So he has to take all these parameters into consideration and determine which can be the best possible site for the copper mine or some other mineral. So basically, so if we talk about the geoinformatics engineer, he can be hired by a telecommunication company, and he want to know which are the best sites for the company's relay transmission, where they need to put up their relay towers, taking into accounts various cost factors such as land price, undulations of the terrain, etc. There can be many, basically. So forest manager, he want to optimize the timber of production using the data on soil and the current tree distribution in the presence of number of operational constraints such as need to preserve the species diversity in the area. So constraints as well as criteria. So both he can combine together and get his optimum sites. Hydrological engineer, he want to study the number of water quality parameters of different sites in a freshwater lake to improve the understanding of current distribution of Taifa reed beds and why it differs from that a decade ago. What is the condition earlier, now what is the condition today, kind of change analysis you can perform. Okay, so now if you can just see in urban planning, there are different applications. Like we want to develop resilient urban studies, urban cities, basically. We want to monitor the urban heat islands or effect in the cities. We want to determine the quality of the life. We want to analyze the traffic flow analysis you can perform. So these can be done on using the geospatial technology in the urban planning way, basically. If we talk about the public health management, it helps us mapping the disease spread areas, analyze the sanitation and health facilities, and the map the vaccination statistics. Health. If we talk about the agriculture and the farming, it can be through the crop monitoring, predict the crop yield, monitor the farm animals, and soil nutrient analysis. So these kind of exercises or these applications can be performed using the geospatial technology. Now let us come to the basics of GIS. Now what is GIS basically? We have talked about geospatial technologies. It was having three components: remote sensing, GIS, and GNSS. So let us focus on the second component, that is GIS. So basically GIS, if we go by the proper definition, many people have given the definition. One such definition is given over here also. It is like a GIS is a computer based system that provide the following four set of capabilities to handle georeference data. Georeference data means the data which is having location information embedded into it. We know where is it on the surface of earth. That kind of data is called a georeferenced data. So if the system is this computer based system is capable of the data capture and the preparing that data or capturing those data sets, it comes as one of the tasks of GIS. Another second one, management of the data, including the storage and the maintenance. It also includes the manipulation and the analysis of the data, and lastly the visualization or the presentation of the data in the form of maps. So first starting from the data capturing and then analyzing it and then representing it in some beautiful form so that the message is conveyed for effective planning or any kind of applications you may do. So the fundamental principle of basically this GIS or the geospatial technologies is on on handling that spatio-temporal problems. Okay, the problems that we face in many use of geospatial technology is that understanding the phenomena that have a spatial or the geographical dimension as well as the temporal dimension. Both it has having spatial dimension and temporal dimension. Spatial dimension means where is it, or where is it on the surface of the earth. Temporal dimension means when it was there, because over the period of time it can change as well. We need to specify that time also. At this time it was at that x location. At time 2 it was it was same at the x location, but the conditions was changed, or so that way. So both it will be having. So it will handle both spatio-temporal problems. This means that our body of study has different characteristics for different locations, the geographical dimension, and also that these characteristics changes over the period of time. That is called the temporal dimension. So you should understand it, spatial as well as temporal. Now, if we talk about the geospatial data, typical example if you can see here, that describes both the location as well as the characteristics of the feature describing our world. We can see we can describe any element of our world in following two ways. Where is it? Where is it? So location information. And second is what is it? That is attributable information, properties of that object. So if you can see here, it is where is it on the surface of the earth? It is at 51 degree north or 112 degree west. At this location, this latitude and longitudes are given, and it is basically a oak tree. Species is oak, height is 15 meter, age is 75 years. So that way we need to give it a complete description. So now from where we will get the data, sources of the data for geoprocessing or this geospatial data, we can get that these kinds of data sets from remote sensing. I told from satellite images, all those images, they are basically the part of remote sensing only. So they are coming from the remote sensing. It can be a photogrammetrical information also. Coming from the photogrammetry means we have got some images and we have processed them using the photogrammetric techniques. One typical example is I want to generate a height map or an elevation model, or I want to generate an orthophoto which is terrain corrected. So these two products, digital elevation model, that is height map basically, and the second one is the orthophoto, that is the terrain corrected images. So these two products, they will come from the photogrammetry. Similarly, the GNSS, the location information, it will come from now from where these data sets will get the latitudes and longitudes. We can embed it from a GNSS, that is Global Navigation Satellite System. Okay, it can be a regional also. And then others like surveying methods are there. Their hard copy maps are also there, which are available with various survey agencies or some there are different government agencies also which will give you some hard copy maps. So they also contribute toward the source of input data for geoprocessing. Similarly, we have ALTM also, that is a laser terrain mapper. Okay, so that these kinds of that is laser scanning basically. That is also one of the source for the geospatial data. Now, how do we represent these kinds of data sets? Once I know that what is remote sensing, what is GIS, what is GNSS, now, and I also talk that they are generating some of the data which we are calling as the GIS data or the geospatial data. So, but how to represent it? So basically there are two models for representing the data. The first model, we call it as a raster data model. All these satellite images I was talking, satellite images, or you can say the scanned maps, they all come under the raster data model. The second one is your vector data model. Vector data model, your definitions will be like geometry based. You are creating those geometries or you are collecting it through the GPS. So to be more specific, if you can see here, the real world is something like that, and we can have the data set as a grid based structure. The smallest unit of a raster data will be 1 pixel. One small square we will generate. You can see it over here also. These kinds of data set. This is one polygon here, The same thing represented in the vector format is like this. So we have some nodes over here, and this is one line represented in the raster data format, and this is one line which is represented in the vector format. Similarly, this is one point. You can see this is one point here represented in a vector format and in raster format. So you can see that in raster the smallest unit is one pixel, one square rectangle over here, and in vector the smallest unit is one point. Okay, one small point is the smallest unit of vector data representation. Now here multiple points will form one line. If one point starts from here and ends again at that same point, it forms a polygon. So the smallest unit of your vector is point and smallest unit of your raster is one pixel. Okay. So like now if we talk about more into detail of it about raster data model, if you can see here, this is your one image, one scanned map you can say. Here I have some corn field at this portion, and here I am writing some fruits is there grown, some wheats are grown here. Again here is a one fruit area, and this is some clover area here. Okay, some another agriculture crop is there, or some other crop is over here. Now this is represented in your raster format like this. Small grids are there. So you can see here that is 1 1 1 1 up to this entire corn. This is one corn. You can see here this exact boundary will not be captured, but it is just an approximation of it like this. Similarly here we have all the numbers called 4. This 4 is representing the fruit. Now if you see here fruit, here also we have the fruit, so this 4 number will be repeated over here also. It is represented by another number by the same number called 4. So this wheat is represented by the number 2. So each and every pixel is having one representation value also, that represents the entity or the object which is on the ground. For corn, I am using the representative number as 1. So these numbers are basically called as a digital number. DN value we can also call it, okay, or the pixel value as basically. So area is covered by grid with usually equal size cells over here, and cells are often represented as pixels or pixel elements. It is also called as a image data. Attributes are recorded by assigning each single cell a single value which is called attribute based upon the majority feature. Whichever is majority at this location, that will be assigned to it, such as land use type. It can be anything basically. So if we talk about the vector data model, in a vector data model we are having 3 entities. One is the point, second is called a line, and third is called the area. So point is basically x and y coordinate pairs plus one label is also there. Similarly we have lines, it is a series of point plus label. Area is the lines forming their boundaries, series of polygons like this. So you can see here this is one polygon point feature. Similarly we have a line feature here, and we have this area feature also here. So it is basically a polygon. Example of attribute, in raster we had only one value, one pixel or one cell, I have one value. Whereas in case of vector we can have multiple attributes for one point, one location. So if you can see here, I have point number 1, this is one polygon. The land use ID is there, category I am defining, shape I am giving, and shape area also I am giving. So this is one polygon, and it has 4 attributes: land use ID, category, shape length, and shape area. So the shape field stores, now this shape field, it stores the spatial data of the polygon. Other fields attributes, they store the attributes such as displayed over here like land use, category, length, or some area kind of thing. Now if we go into more details how the satellite image look like, we also talked about grids or cells, the actual image basically. If you can see here, this is one satellite image, I am showing it over here black and white. Okay, so now if you zoom it to one portion, it will give you the series of pixels over here. Okay, now what are these series of pixels? If I take one particular pixel over here, this pixel will have some y digital numbers. Now this is the way you see the image, whereas your computer sees the image in this form. Okay, I am just talking about a satellite image now. Computer is seeing that image in this form. So each pixel has a digital number which represents the spectral reflectance value, satellite image, these numbers are representing nothing but just the reflectance value from the surface of the earth of that by that object basically. Now let us come to the characteristics of this satellite image data set or the data or the raster data basically. The first one is that it has to be geographically referenced. The data is in sync with the ground coordinates. It helps in making the actual measurements on the data set. And where is it? Suppose you want to find out the area of this particular polygon. So if it would have been a normal picture, you would have not got the actual area. But since this is an actual image and this is a georeference basically, so I am giving it by drawing this polygon, I am getting the area as 18057.46 square meter, or we can say 1.8 hectares. This is the area. I am able to get it. Why I am able to get it? Because this image is geographically referenced. Each and every pixel is in sync with the ground coordinates basically. So there are different types of ground coordinate systems which you need to embed into your image. That we can do through some programs also, or through Python programming, or sometimes in current scenario we are already getting the georeference data. So whenever you are dealing with this satellite images or the raster images, you should also consider what kind of geographical referencing that image has, whether it has that referencing or not. You should keep in mind that thing also. The first question you should ask whether the image or the satellite image is geographically referenced or not. If at all it is referenced, then which reference system it has. I think you will be covering more detail in the Python programming. By taking one image, you can know what is the coordinate system of this image or what kind of georeferencing this image has. So there are certain small codes in Python also which you will learn in coming the lectures, that by which you can know the referencing of the image, and you should do it also basically. Okay, so some of the referencing system are, if you see here, like EPSG 3857, these are some codes they are generated. EPSG means European Petroleum Survey Group basically. So this is one agency which has created some code for the referencing system. Like one of the coordinate system or the ground coordinate system is pseudo Mercator or spherical Mercator. We call it a pseudo Mercator or spherical Mercator basically. So this is WGS 84, and this Google Maps are handling it, OpenStreetMaps, Bing Map, ArcGIS, Esri Maps. They all are under this reference system 3857. So here the unit of measurement is meters, means that coordinates are not in degree and decimal. The coordinates are in meters basically. I was telling to you like like the coordinate of Dehradun are 78 or some 30 degree, 78 degree, 78 degree, or we can, the other one is called 38 degree latitude basically, 78 degree longitude and 30 degree latitude. Some example I am giving you here. Okay, so so there the measurement units are in degrees, but if we talk about this coordinate system 3857, okay, here the unit of measurements is meter. So you won't be having the coordinates in those degrees. It will be in big number will be there in meters only. Okay, another coordinate system is very popular one across the globe. It is 4326, EPSG 4326 code. Now it is basically the geographical coordinate system, that in the degrees, the unit is degrees. So whatever degrees and latitudes and longitudes if your image is in the form of a latitudes and longitudes only, those coordinates, then we can call it this image is in 4326 coordinate system. Okay, that is a geographical coordinate system. So it has WGS 84 spheroid is their word. We also call it as a World Geodetic System 1984, and basically it is used in GPS also. You can go to this detail for more details onto this epsg.io, then 4326 you will get the details of this particular coordinate system as well. Second characteristic is your satellite images basically they are the, or any photograph, they have the multiple bands basically, multiple spectral bands we call it. So you should also know, you should write one small code also, one line of code, ki how many spectral bands are there in my image. Like normal photograph if you are taking, that photograph, color photograph, that also have 3 bands, RGB. red, green and blue. Normal my photograph, that is in 3. But if we talk for the images which are coming from the satellite, those satellite images not only have 3 bands, those 3 primary colors, it also have some other bands also, like infrared is there, it can also have a thermal band, it can also have microwave bands, many the entire electromagnetic spectrum basically they are covering. So a typical example, if you, and they all are in separate bands. If you see here, one typical example of a satellite image from basically from the list 3, one of the sensor of Indian satellite is there, called ResourceSat 1. Okay, in that ResourceSat 1 name of the satellite, we have one sensor called list 3, linear imaging self scanning. That is the name of the sensor. Satellite, one sensor. That sensor is capturing the image in different bands basically here. It can be band number 1, band number 2, 3, 4, 5. 4 bands are there basically in your list 3. Here I am showing you around 7 bands are there. So this is not from list 3, it is from again another satellite from the US, that is Landsat, Landsat 1. So there we have 7 bands are there. So the bands, if you can see, band number 1, band number 2, another band number 3, this is called blue, green, red, near infrared, and then there can be again 2 bands for near infrared and then short wave infrared also. So this bands also you can see 0.45 to 0.52 micrometer. If the reflectance is in this range from that object, it is represented in this form. If that of these objects, the objects are the reflectance of the objects in the range from 0.5 to 0.6, another band, band number 2. Okay, now using these bands you can create a composite of the images. If you can see, I have taken 3 bands, 1, 2 and 3 from this Landsat. I have created one true color composite. Okay, the basic bands I am taking like photograph bands only, red, green and blue, and I am able to get this true color composite. Similarly, if I take 432, I will get a false color composite here. Now if you can see here, some red portion is all vegetation, whereas this black portion is a water body. So they have their own scientific use, these color composites. So you should be aware that image is nothing but just a collection of these spectral bands, and how to represent them, that again depends upon your Python code or which kind of whatever software you are using. You can make a combination of different sources of these bands have their own peculiarities also. That again is subject of remote sensing basically, ki what band is useful for what kind of application. So there that is again a different sessions for that, and different not under the scope of this particular course. So but for this Python you should remember, these are satellite image is nothing but just a collection of different spectral bands, and you can manipulate with these bands also. You should try to see what is the size of one band, how many bands are there, and if you are combining this band, what kind of color combination you are getting it. So these kind of small codes you should be learning in your in due course of time in this course, maybe in the 3rd or the 4th session. Now information content is also dependent upon the image pixel size basically. What is the size of one pixel, smallest unit. If I come here, if you can see here, this all image is formed from small pixels. Now again the size of one pixel also tells you what kind of information content you are having. So you should also know what is the size of one pixel of that image. Through some code you should try to explore it there. Okay, if you can see here, this is one image from Ocean Color Monitor, one sensor. Okay, this is 360 meters. Okay, now this 360 meters, if I zoom it further at this region, at this zoom level, I am able to see some features. But if I zoom it further here at 1 pixel level, I will get something like this. You cannot see anything over here. Information content is not at all visible. I am able to see at this zoom level, but I am not able to see at this zoom level. So you should be aware how this pixel size is changing the information content. Now if you see here another, this is your 188 meter wide field scanner sensor, one sensor WIFS, WIFS. From that one, this is the size of 1 pixel is 188 meter, basically some old sensor basically. And this is your 72 meter. This is LIS 1, another old sensor of Indian from the Indian satellite. Here the size of 1 pixel is 1 meter, 72 meter basically. Again, if you see here, information content, the same size I am taking here. The area in the small square marked 4 kilometer by 4 kilometer area. This particular area is your 4 kilometer by 4 kilometer here in the image. So that 4 kilometer by 4 kilometer area, I am seeing it like this in 360 meter. If the size of pixel is 360 meter. If the size of same pixel is 188 meter, then I am able to see some content. If the size of one pixel is 72 meter, I am able to see some more content over here. But the sensor is all, of course, a different sensor. In 36 meter, I am able to see some more details. Now, if we say in 23 meters, that is LIS 3, one size of one pixel is 23 meters by 23 meter square, 23 meter by 23 meter. I am seeing that same 4 kilometer by 4 kilometer area like this. More details are there. 5.8 meter, that is again PAN data from some of the Indian satellite, IRS-1C, name of the satellite, PAN is the sensor. Okay, so here the size of one pixel is 5.8 meter. So I am able to see this many details over here. You can see here even the ground is also clearly visible here. Okay, so when we are going for the Python, you should also see what is the size of that one small pixel. You should read it through some Python code, size of one pixel. Okay, we also call it as a spatial resolution. The common, again the term is used for it. Now third is again the depth of the pixel, how many colors one pixel can represent. Radiometry, we call it as a radiometry of the image basically. So it is again dependent upon the pixel depth also. Okay, how many color variations I can have for one pixel. Okay, it describes the actual information content in an image. So you should also know, like if you see here 1 bit, so I have only two colors are there, black and white. 4 bit, I have a good number of variations. Gray scale also I have many. Okay, there are many colors for that. 4 bit also. So if you see here, okay, number of gray levels, it again dependent upon this formula is there, 2 to the power number of bits. If I say my data is 4 bit, so 2 to the power 4 means 16 basically. So 16 colors I will be having for one pixel. So there are so many pixels. So I can have multiple variations of those colors in that image. You can see here, I am not able to get a clear picture of different features here, because it is represented by only two colors, whereas it is represented by 16 colors. Here the representation is of 256 colors. So these colors is also, they also play a very important role in a satellite image. So you should, as a pre-processing step, you should also know what is the radiometry of your satellite image or the depth of one pixel. You try to explore it through some Python code. Fifth, temporal also. What is the season of the, what is the date of pass of the data, when that data was captured. This is also very important. Now if you see here, typical example here, this is your LIS 3 image. It was taken in November 2009, same year, and the same image in February 2009. You can see here all feature is there, this red, whereas here it is displayed by some gray color, some green color is there. So where is that feature gone? So some natural phenomena might have occurred here, like it can be a leaf fall kind of thing. Some vegetation was there. It was full of leaves in the month of November, but in the month of February there are no leaves on that trees. So I am not getting any reflectance from the leaves. So it is again a bare soil kind of thing. It is coming over here. So this also plays a very important role in your geoprocessing. You just see, try to explore it. What is the date of pass of that image? That also you try to explore. Now this is again about the spatial data models. Some differences also we should know. What are the difference between raster and vector? So raster data model, basically it is referenced by a grid. Vector data model, again it by some coordinate x and y, and attribute is represented as a single value for that cell, whereas attribute reference to unique ID number to a table. There can be there is a one big table for it which can contain multiple attributes. Much data comes in this form of images. Here we have different formats called DIME, Tiger, Shapefile is also a very popular format. Even your GeoJSON or KML files, they all are under the vector data. Basically, it is good for the elevation or the temperature kind of, for the continuous features, whereas it is good for the discrete boundaries like property, country or political boundaries or the transportation. For those kind of things, this vector is good, whereas for this elevation or the continuous data, your raster data is very much useful. Now, what that is having talked about I quickly I will talk about some of the spatial analysis also. What kind of a spatial analysis we perform? So, it is a process of studying the entities by examining, accessing, evaluating, and modeling the spatial data such as location, attribute, and the relations that reveal the geometric or the geographical property of the data set. If you go, you can see here there can be multiple layers of data sets. Now, if you see here the different kinds of analysis, we have different analysis for vector and we have different set of analysis for raster data also. So, if we talk about for this vector data, some of the operations like buffering, creating one line is there, I want to create a buffer of 100 meters. Okay. Similarly, that is overlay, I want to overlay two layers on top of each other so that I can get both the information in a single layer. Distance measurement, pattern analysis, or the map manipulation. So, these are some of the operations that are available in your vector GIS or the vector data set. Whereas for the raster data set, some of the operations like local operations, it can be a single or the multiple rasters, or I can have some zonal operations also. We can have some neighborhood operations and some physical distance operations also. So, if we talk about the location or the neighborhood operation, basically if we talk it, you have one small filter, one image is there, and you want to make some changes on 3 by 3 size throughout the image. You have created one small filter of 3 by 3 image of 3 by 3 3 rows and 3 columns, and you want to run this filter in the entire image. So, basically like high pass filter or the low pass filter. So, they are basically used for this neighborhood operations. Zonal operations means you have some boundaries. On those boundaries you want to perform some operations, not in the entire data set, but zone wise you want to perform the operations over there. Local means you want to just have one image and you want to add two images together, or you want to subtract those images, divide those images. So, those cell by cell basically. So, that is again under the location operations. Some of the methods like map overlay I was talking, you can have a union or the intersection of the two layers or multiple layers. I can have point in polygon or line in polygon or polygon in polygon kind of operations over there. Map manipulations, it includes clipping it, just take some part from that image, eliminate some of the portions, add something to it, update, erase and split. These are some of the operations that we carry out in the map manipulation. Similarly, for the proximity, like I was talking, buffer analysis, it can be a multiple ring buffer, it can be point distance also. Pattern analysis, nearest neighbor analysis we can perform, spatial autocorrelation we can perform. And if we talk about the network analysis, that is the shortest route analysis we can perform on top of it. Raster based functions, it can be local, focal, zonal and global. So, these are 4 operations. Map algebra like addition, addition of two rasters, subtraction of two rasters. Similarly, the terrain analysis, hydrographic analysis or reclassification. Let us take one example here. One of the operations, this is your map A and this is your map B vector data sets. Now, you have combined them together, overlaid these two maps on top of each other, then you are getting it here. Now, a new polygon is created called C1, and here it has C2, C4, C, all around 6 polygons are formed here. There we having 2 polygons. Here we have only 4 polygons, but when we overlaid on top of each other, so 6 polygons were formed. Now, what is the C1? C1 is basically attribute is A1 and second attribute is B1. So, C1 is having both the attributes of both these maps. Similarly, C6 is having the attributes from A2, this one, and from B4 here like this. So, that way this attribute will be created. Similarly, for the raster, if you can see here, I have map A and map B. So, I can have map C, I can create map A plus 10. add 10 to all the pixels. So created. Similarly, map B I am creating here. So in map C I am create. If I see map C, I am saying map A plus map B. Add these two. That will give you map C1. And if I say map C2, map A minus map B upon map A minus plus map B into 100. So all these three operations we can be performed to get this. Example, this is your land use, is forest I want. This is having all the land use here. And here I have one AND operation, and this is a slope map. So steep slope basically. So I want the land use should be forest and your slope should be steep. So both I want together. So I can perform an intersect operation and I will get these particular polygons, this green polygons, they are the forest land under the steep category of slope. So these all operations you will be performing there. How it does basically? Some more operations we can see here. Map A and map B, if we say output, map A is greater than map B. Okay, some relational operation I am applying over here, relation function. So you can see here, it will check it here. If it is greater than, then it is 1. If not, then 0. So it has classified into these kinds of map. Map A, wherever map the pixel value is greater than the pixel value of map B, we have got 1, whereas other part it is 0. Example 5, it is greater than this 4, this pixel, so that's why it is 1. Whereas if you go to 6, and here at this bottom I have 8. So 6 is obviously less than 8, so it is 0 over here. Okay. So if you see terrain visualization here, so this kind of image I can get it from a photogrammetric operations, and from that this is one DEM, digital elevation model, and this we can create a shaded relief out of it. You try to create it through Python program. So it is giving me the impression which portions are elevated and which portions are in the valleys basically. And here if I can, and I can also create a 3D visualization using this particular map. This is your DEM height map, and I can have one raster image, satellite image. I can drape them one over each other, and this 3D visualizations can be created. So if we talk about terrain analysis, from a digital elevation model we can develop slope, we can calculate the aspect map. It is a directional measure of the slope. The maximum slope is the direction basically. Surface curvature I can create. Break in line slope analysis we can perform. Watershed analysis can be performed. But like flow accumulation, flow direction, or the stream order or watershed boundaries, they all can be delineated from a digital elevation model, and these are some of the parameters of a digital elevation model which can be derived from it basically. You can use some Python program or some application programs as well. So estimating the slope, it is seeing over here. This is your DEM, and this is your slope map created from the DEM. You can see here, and similarly the aspect map, the direction of the slope it is showing. These are also very useful in different kinds of applications, wherein, like example, if you see in the hilly region, if I want to grow a particular kind of crop, it can grow only in certain aspect of the slope. It will not grow in the another aspect of the slope. Like southeast direction is suitable for many things. Like houses are constructed basically in the southern aspect because there is the sunlight is there. So this aspect information also becomes very useful for geospatial analysis. So you need to use, what you should do, you should try to write some Python code for converting this DEM into and deriving these different parameters from this elevation model basically. Now if you see here one of the example here using GIS, so I have the soil map, we have some water resources boundaries here, depth to water table map is there, and then I have the land use map, and then cadastral boundaries I am having, village infrastructure I am having, all these things are there, and out of it we can create an integrated geospatial analysis is performed, and a planning map can be created basically out of it. So one example like groundwater prospect zoning, it can be done through it. You can see here different factors are there, we are integrating them together, and then we are creating a map like this. So a complete methodology is there. Satellite image, so Survey of India topo sheet, some digitization we are performing, some existing maps are there. We created the base maps over here. Lithological maps are generated, structural map, geomorphological map, hydrological maps are created, all are integrated together, and then hydrogeomorphic units are there, and then evaluation of the prospect map, identification of the location of recharge structure, observation well data we have got it here, then finally the geo database of the ground data can be created here. So complete methodology is like this. So basically I want to say that you need to combine all these GIS layers together to perform any kind of analysis, which I was talking in the starting, like forester, he want to do a timber optimization. How he will do it? He need to get these criteria data set basically for it. And then combine them together. So if you see here the landslide hazard risk map, so around 15 maps are there, okay, data sets are there, and they are combined together. So there is one basic model is there, simple additive weighing, SAW, okay. So here you have the criteria and you have the weights. Divide the criteria by the weights, sorry, multiply the criteria by the weights and do it for all the criteria. You have first base lithological map, you have one weight for it. Geomorphological unit, you have one weight for it. Multiply that weight by this layer, multiply the weight of this by lithological unit, lithological map. Similarly, do it for all the layers, and then you can create these kinds of hazard maps as well. But you should have the domain specific knowledge also of it for it. So with this, I just come to the last slide of my lecture here. There are different softwares also basically which helps you to perform geospatial analysis, but they are some are free and some are costly also, and there are 10 to 20 lakhs of money is proprietary softwares are there, which you need to spend that much of money to get these softwares. Of course, there are some free alternates also, like for ArcGIS you can go for the QGIS software, ILVIS is there, GRASS or PostGIS. Many softwares are there. They are basically free in nature. So it can be explored if you are not comfortable with Python programming directly. So first you go for this visualizing the data, performing the analysis on these softwares, and then you can, once you understood it, then you can move it to the Python programming for or the vice versa also you can see it. Once you have done all the operations in your Python program, outputs are generated, then you can move those data sets into your these softwares and can visualize them over there. So changing emphasis is like this here. Earlier 5% of in the past many data was created, 75% of energy was going into data conversion, data creation, and only 5% went to the analysis part. Now in the current we have very data is already prepared and huge amount of data is already available in the internet. So basis focus is toward the spatial analysis now. You need not to go into the much details of those data. You just get this data from different sources and you can perform your data set, perform your geo processing basically. So these are some of the sources from where we can get the data. One is from the ISRO, that is Bhuvan Geo Portal. From huge wealth of data is available there. You can download them. Also, some of the data you can download, some of the data you can use as a web service and can utilize in your processing as well. I will share the slides with you. And similarly, we have MOSDAQ portal, which gives you the data sets on the weather information basically. Other portals are like satellite images you can get from Landsat, from MODIS, from SRTM, DM. There are numerous sources basically. Some of the popular formats on the geospatial domain for the raster data, we have GeoTIFF format, NetCDF format, HDF, IMG. For vector data, we have the SAVE files, or WKT is there, well-known text, KML are there, GeoJSON is there. So try to explore these data sets through Python programming and do some sorts of geo processing with these data sets. With this, I come to the end of this particular lecture. Hope I am able to convey the message through this lesson, that through this lecture about the various kinds of geo data sets and the geo processing involved into it. So henceforth you will be going into the Python and you will be exploring these kinds of data and processing through Python. So thank you very much, and these are some of the references. Yeah, we will come to an end. I will take some few questions and then just 5 minutes break, and then we can have some questions out of it. Thank you very much.